Welcome to Last in Line podcast, where we are highlighting, showcasing, and spotlighting great leaders of faith who have overcome adversity, cultivated resilience, and served others in a significant capacity. So settle in and be encouraged by this episode of Last in Line podcast. Hey guys, I'm excited to welcome Brian Covey to the podcast. He is a former pro soccer player, played D1 soccer at Memphis, and is now the founder of Covey Holdings and the executive vice president at Revolution Mortgage. Brian, he's an innovative leader. He believes in creating a company culture and training and building a legacy with his people. He's experienced incremental 10x type growth in the most recent years, into the billions in less than 5 years, and also wrote a book called Conversations with Covey, which is a collection of stories from impactful leaders who have been at the very bottom and fought their way back, and through perseverance and through resilience came back out on top. And he's got his own story in there as well. Had some issues back in 2008, like many people during the stock market crash, but Brian has built his business back to exceedingly abundantly above what it was. And so he hosts a podcast called The Brian Covey Show. He has been sought after by publications such as Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine. He is a self-proclaimed competitor to the nth degree. We talk a lot about his dad and him being a pastor's kid and some of the rocky roads he went down as a teenager before really owning his faith in Christ. And we talked again at the end. There's a surprise question I asked him that I wasn't planning on, and it went pretty well about his dad. So I look forward to you hearing this, and I think you're going to get a little better today. I know you will. So with that, welcome Brian Covey to Last in Line podcast. Hey, Brian Covey, welcome to Last in Line podcast. Glad to have you.
John, thanks for having me, my friend. It's great to kind of hang out, share some good stories, and have some fun here.
Yeah, man. Well, we talk a lot about leadership and something you might know something about, and we talk a lot about faith, and we're going to dig into some of the work you do on the business side. But I mean, like I told you off camera, I could do it just like everybody always does it when they bring you on a podcast, but I think we're going to go a different direction. And we're going to start out with some kind of icebreaker stuff, just a couple questions, just so the audience can kind of dig in and settle in and figure out maybe a little something about you real quick. These aren't normal run of the mill, so brace yourself, buckle in if you got a seatbelt on that chair, but
let's do it.
Here we go. My audience, okay, I'm gonna speak for them, and I want you to complete the sentence here for me. If they were to walk away from this, okay, I'm really glad that I heard this podcast with Brian Covey because. What do you want him to say?
I was that you were meant to do something great with your life, and God has uniquely gifted you, and we're going to pull some of that out today to find your competitive edge and give you a little bit of that spark and maybe a little bit of that inspiration to go take action today.
That's good. Yeah. I want people to be able to maybe know something different that they wouldn't see maybe on Instagram or on your website, and maybe they wouldn't even hear it on one of your podcasts. But it's good to get to know kind of where guys come from, the roots, how you got to just kind of your DNA spiritually, relationally, your familial kind of background. I know you're kind of a Memphis guy at heart. But before I go into your background, your family, and your faith, kind of your faith testimony, if we stumble on a time capsule 100 years from now and your name's on it, okay, I need to know one personal item that was evidence, okay, of your contribution. I want to know one 80s band recommendation that you would write on a piece of paper for that person 100 years from now, and then maybe an author recommendation.
Ooh.
Somebody you would recommend as an author besides yourself.
Right. Yeah. We got to keep it real with people. Like tell them that. You know, on the contribution side, man, I'd be remiss if I didn't say my wife and I, like Nicole, is amazing, and our three kids is that generational piece. We've got one daughter about to be 16, and our two boys. And that's everybody is like my legacy will be lived on for generations through them. Just like my dad never got a chance to meet my grandparents, who were already passed when I was
Mhm.
born, but I look at that, and as I evolve, it'll be that legacy through my family and through my kids, and people see how I love them, how I showed up for them, and that's my driving force. That's my burn. Is my parents gave me a shot and a chance and fought and sacrificed, and I'm gonna do the same for my kids, and make sure that my wife and I are that example for them. So
Yeah.
that's of the 80s band. Man, it's funny you bring up bands. So I'm a bass player. You may not know that. And I
Did
played in
not.
our church. I grew up playing in a band in high school and then a little bit in college. We had a record released, all this. Most people don't know that. So fun fact, I don't talk about it very
Okay.
often.
I told
So
you
you go
we'd
back
do
and
something different today. I
to
told
say
you we're already doing it.
most people don't even know about it. If you go in our playroom, I've got all my basses still and all of that. So still jamming, still playing some that are there.
Nice.
80s, I was probably more into I gotta give Metallica a shout out because
Let's go.
I'm gonna go back to that because I listened to them then and I listen to them now, which to
Yeah.
me is a testament of a band that's like transcended. I'll never remember Earl's. I'm trying to remember the drummer's name. Ulrich, one of the best drummers, and had all this like huge kit and all this stuff there. But those guys
Wow.
had the hair, they were jamming, and I think they transcended across culture. So I'm gonna go
It did.
Metallica, but I did listen to a lot of rap in Memphis. Full disclosure, I'll put this in there for you guys too. Rap that came out of Memphis, and of course Elvis and all that. You gotta be an appreciator.
Let's go. I'm a big Elvis guy too.
There we go. And the movie was awesome.
It
So I gotta say
was. Agreed.
that was really good. And we had everything from Christian rap come out of there to 3 6 Mafia that you hear in the Titans theme song now. So we
Whoa.
had it all.
Okay, good.
Books.
Or
Well,
an author. It doesn't have to be one particular book. That'd be hard to do,
yeah,
but
authors. The one that I'm really enjoying as of late, John Maxwell is probably my top.
yeah.
Like I just think back to like my journey and
Mm-hmm.
the impact he's had. I've had a chance to meet him, and so
Mm-hmm.
I'd separate John, but I love Stephen Covey stuff. I'm a huge John
Mm-hmm.
Gordon fan. My friend Ben Newman's put out some books. I could go on, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna go John Maxwell since I've had a chance. When you meet an author or a celebrity or someone, you're like, man, they're just like I envisioned them, but only cooler. Like
Yeah.
they're nice. They're like
Yeah. Their
crazy,
head fits through the door. That's incredible. No,
and
yeah.
he's got a great testimony, and he's a great man of God and his faith, and so he transcends
Hmm.
over.
Well, big shocker you picked Stephen Covey. I mean, I'm sure you're related at some point, but no, that's a hard one to beat. Covey laid the foundation for a lot of business people. But no, I think that Maxwell answer probably would be a pretty common one if I asked 100 people. I bet you that, leaders, faith guy, I guarantee you that would be at least 80, 60, 70%. I don't know if I could give him 80, but I
Yeah.
definitely would do that. All right. So here we go. And I'm a big dude. I'm a big 80. I was a 90s rap kid, and that was before before Jesus. And now I'm Christian rap. And I still go back
Yeah.
to the Journeys, the Def Leppards of the world. I mean, they weren't quite as extreme as Metallica. I do like Metallica, but some of that sticks, some of that old stuff. Yeah, I don't know, that makes everybody understand just how ancient I'm becoming. But all right, so Memphis. I don't know if you were your testimony starts in the cradle or how,
Huh.
if you've got a pre and a post story. I'd love to hear kind of, if you have a pre, kind of how you came to your faith, a little bit of your testimony, and maybe some struggles with that along the way. Because I mean, people right now that are giving their life to Christ are walking that line, one foot in the other world, one foot in the new world, and that
Yeah.
struggle of transition. So maybe you speak to that a little bit.
Man, is anybody out there that's a pastor's kid? You'll
Oh
relate to the
man.
story. So I'll go through, but it's probably gonna be a different twist than you're expecting. So my dad actually was a pastor for many years, still is, right? Ordained minister and all that in the Methodist church. And then he's moved on and is now a psychologist.
And I remember my mom and my dad are the best examples of faith and like always taking us to church on Sundays, you know, unless I had soccer or something there. Like we were the kids, we were always in church, small church until I got to high school. I went to a bigger church. And, you know, throughout my life, what I look back on is I was always exposed and like knew who Jesus was, knew who God, my parents were amazing, like praying in front of me, praying for us, praying with us, like that example. But I realized I never really had a relationship until my senior year going into college, and I was leaving high school, and you know I'd gotten mixed up with all the different drinking and drugs and the wrong crowds, the stupid stuff that if we had enough time that I can look back now and go, okay, God saved me and rescued me out of moments that it could have gone the absolute opposite direction. And that's why I always have a lot of grace for people that have made mistakes in their life, because a lot of times the only difference is they made mistakes and they got caught. Just be real. Like, I'm gonna break through some of this with you. Like, I mean, John, that's right. The truth is sometimes they just got caught and somebody else didn't get caught. But the reality is we're all sinners. And I started to realize that, and I started to have this urge in my life. And I was going to church. I'm like, I'm feeling it, but I'm like, I'm not really getting it. Like, I'm not, I didn't have a real breakthrough in an awakening. And I'll never forget. And I was there on a Sunday, and that morning, some things started to stir up in me. And then that week, I went oddly enough to my dentist. I'm talking to my dad, and I'm asking all these questions. I've been reading the book, Lee Strobel, The Case for Christ. And I'm like trying to sort through all these things. And I remember that Sunday following, and just something was different in my heart where I was like, I need to actually proclaim and like bring Jesus in, like invite him back. Like, cause he's already saying, come to me, like, Brian, come to me. And I'd had so many things. And as a kid that had some troubled past, I'm sure there were a lot of people in the church going, and we're glad he's here. We're even more glad he's actually making a decision, right? Because growing up as a pastor's kid, there's that pressure of like, well, you just got it all figured out. And you guys just read the Bible and sing Kumbaya all the time. And it's like, everybody's got to have their own journey.
You're holy by osmosis, right? You're just holy
like,
by
it's
osmosis.
Just you're gonna get it by being there. That's not real. We all know that. It's your journey. What I would share with everybody is it's got to be your decision, just like with my kids now. And my dad was phenomenal at that, and my mom, of showing me what Christ's love was like, but never being the one to say like, okay, you have to go do this, or pressuring me, and gave me so much grace through a lot of mistakes. And I really think that's what's transformed me since then into a dad and older in my life now, of like perspective of what Jesus is able to do, seeing the things that he's been able to do. And I've had friends of mine that are my age now just coming to know him and bring him into their life and seeing the transformation. So never gets old. Everybody's like, I mean, there's nothing more exciting than that. Maybe when your kids are born, right? Like, it's a similar feeling. If you haven't experienced that, those are amazing. So my journey had its bumps and bruises and stuff that I look back and go, man, I could have easily ended up in another direction, but there were people praying for me and in my life that wanted to see that change. And it's never the same after that. Not perfect. I still make a ton of mistakes. My wife will tell you, and I know a lot of them, right? But I will say, man, it is worth living with Christ versus alone. I can't imagine going back to that.
I mean, you're preaching to the choir. I mean, my audience is 99.9% guys that are saying amen and pumping their fist to that. And I was just thinking about this the other day, or just earlier today, as I'm bringing the trash cans back to the backyard, from the street, and I'm just kind of walking, and I'm thinking, as we judge people, like, because we all do it, and I'm thinking, if I would have flipped scripts with somebody who might have been inner city that's now looking through, iron bars for the rest of their life, like, I grow up in that environment. Who knows what happens to me, right? I mean, we all judge. We don't know unless we've been there. And man, I can tell you, I'm lucky to be here, because some of the things you mentioned about, our journey and growing up, I can't believe I made it, to be honest, through some of the stupidity that I was a part of. But so tell somebody today, along those lines, about you're raising your kids in church, you were raised in church, and got to make it your own, got to take ownership of it, and give some parents maybe some encouragement right now that what can they do without pushing them off the cliff to take ownership and really just kind of beating them over the head. What can they do to help maybe roll out that red carpet, make it look attractive to really kids to latch on to that and make it their own? How do we do that as parents?
Man, I love this question too, because I get asked, obviously being preacher's kid, people ask like, what was your journey and all that? And I share those. And here was my journey, my experience, but also what I've experienced is as a father of three is number one, meet your kids where they are. Meet your kids where they are means I've got a 7, 14, and about to be 16 in a couple weeks. And they're each on very different journeys. They learn differently. They receive information differently. And I'll say, like, my 7-year-old watches everything I do. He still wants to be like dad. He's paying attention to what I do. Like when we pray at night, like that, I'm planting seeds with him to go through that. He's still very, very moldable. Look, he's very young. He hasn't experienced the world and all this. But to meet him where he is, we're just reading books together. We're reading verses together. You can put out a daily verse in your kitchen, right? Like simple things that you can do today that isn't forcing it on them, but it's inviting them in. Well, look, like my 14-year-old is very different. He's very much a gamer. He's into all the different Roblox and all the Minecraft, all that stuff.
Yeah.
He's very much a reader. And, middle school, he was like in the Million Word Club and reading all this. And so for him, giving him the book, like I did, like The Case for Christ and other books, Purpose-Driven Life, right? Like Warren, like you're meeting them where they are, where he's going to read that stuff. Yeah. And then my oldest, my daughter, I think about meeting her where she is she needs to see my love, like how I treat my wife, how I treat her, how I operate. She's watching those things. And there's been times, and I'll tell you guys this, real talk, where there's some Sundays where we got a lot of stuff going on. If you can only take one of your kids to church, only one of you as a parent can take them, you still need to go.
Right.
So like a lot of times I fell into that trap, and I hear that we can't all go as a family, so nobody's going to go. And for the men that are listening, you're the leader of the house. Let's just call it. You need to lead by example. And by no way am I saying that I get it right and I'm perfect with all that. But the couple times that I took my daughter and it was just us, or just her and her closest brother to her age, the 14-year-old, dude, those are the times. And spend time with them. And so the last part I would tell you is, they watch you as the example. The trips you can take with them and the time you invest in them. Don't underestimate a car ride in 30 minutes. Turn down the radio, put down, obviously you shouldn't be driving the phone anyway, but have your kid put down their phone as well. And actually, if you can engage in those conversations, I'm always looking to plant a seed, ask a question and see where they are. And don't be afraid to be courageous and ask them, hey, how's your faith going? Where are you in your relationship with God and with Jesus? Like, what are you thinking? What are you reading today? Like, where are you? And that, I tell you, we overthink this a lot of times. Like we think it's got to be this, there's like grandioso thing. And we got to be magical with our words, and just meet them where they are, be the example, and don't underestimate those small moments and little opportunities of time that you can be moving them closer.
That's good. No, I mean, Rick Warren's book was right when I came to Christ. That was one of the first, probably the first book, Purpose-Driven Life. And it actually, I shared it with my parents, and it actually brought them back to that faith journey that they had gotten away from. So yeah, it's powerful to just kind of hand resources or plant seeds, like you said. And I will say to dads right now, and this sounds like common sense and should be just like straight intuitive without even having to think about it, but the words you speak to them, though, have to align with your actions. Like we have to be living the example before we want to say, hey, are you, how's your faith going? Dad, when you were over here doing something else, like that sounds straightforward, but guys might not realize they're not living it, that they're kind of doing the as I say, not as I do mentality. And that doesn't work. Kids they read a fraud from a mile away. So have you ever kind of struggled with any of that? Have you ever had any times where maybe it wasn't a season, but maybe it was a day? Like some days I'll feel like, crap, I kind of lost my temper, or maybe I judge somebody here and I tell them not to judge, and I'm like, I missed it. So you have anything like that where you kind of catch yourself?
More than I care to admit. And that's the reality of like going through that and realizing, and whether it's a temper, and for many of us men, like, that's one of the first things sometimes that can go, and you get frustrated, you get mad, you're tired from the day, and you just expect it to be this way or that way. And you want your kids to do this or do that. And, what I come back to, Something I learned about 5 years ago as a mentor of mine, and this should help everybody listening today, is I started to recognize patterns in my life. When was I being triggered? Why was I being triggered? And I was able to tie it back to the root of what it was. And the root was typically I was further away from God than I need to be. I hadn't been in the Word. I hadn't been really I didn't have my identity cemented in who God has called me to be and who He's said I am. And so my belief system was out of alignment in the sense of the reason I was getting mad and frustrated and I let my temper get out of hand is I'm mad at myself about something else. And I just chose that moment to take it out on them. It wasn't what they did. Was I really mad they didn't take the trash out or score straight A's or go do whatever we told them to do or whatever it was? I realized it's never as big as what we make it in that moment. But when you can recognize patterns, the next step for you is going to be, how do you break the pattern? So now I have things that I recognize when I start to get escalated and I'm starting to get frustrated. It's like
triggers.
One
starting
for me
to
is
notice the triggers.
take a deep breath. Yep. When you notice the triggers and you notice the patterns, you can now tie it back and you can reprogram your subconscious to respond differently. And so what I'll catch myself doing, and my kids kind of know it, especially my daughter, is there's times that I'll just be quiet. I'll take a deep breath and I'll just be quiet. And they usually know, okay, is he upset? Is he mad? What's going on here? It's always better to be quiet than to speak out. And we think that we're forcing our will or making some type of impact. We're making the wrong impact when we speak out of anger, right? And so that's what I would share with people is when you get frustrated on that, man, it's just out of alignment of who you are. And the faster you can get back there, recognizing the patterns and the triggers, but more importantly, have a response. How are you going to respond when it happens? Because it will. It will. How do you respond? That has been an anchor for me in going through some of those exercises of that's not who I am. I'm not an angry person. I'm not a mean person. I'm not a hateful person. I'm a loving dad. And just remind yourself who you are when you're creating, and then you can move through that. That'd be my advice.
It's good. And I didn't even plan on this being like a parenting talk, but I do have one more for you along those lines. Of your three, surely you've identified the one that's most like you. And does your impatience or agitation or anger manifest toward that person more? Because personally, if I know one of my kids exemplifies some of the qualities that I kind of wish I didn't have, it almost triggers me as an insecurity to myself. Does that totally clear as mud right there? Or
clear as mud. I've got
was
a
that
different
clear
experience.
though?
It's like there's parts of me in each of them, definitely more so in our youngest. And I think that is all around the environment. As I traveled a lot with our older two, and so I wasn't there as much through some of those years traveling. And then now with our youngest, I've been here and I realized, man, I missed some things there. I'm going to be there. And so I think a lot of his characteristics do take on what's there for me. But I would say he's a better version. He's sweeter, he's calmer. I do see his emotional side, right, will come out. So when he gets his feelings hurt, I can relate to that, being a people pleaser for part of my life, large part of my life. I can see he wants people to be happy and to like him and all that, but he is ruthlessly competitive with himself. You know what I mean? The boy wants to compete and wants to win. And so I see that and coaching him through. I'll be proud of him. I'll tell you a story. Last night we were playing and he played baseball last night and their team got smoked, by the way, 13-0. Okay. The umps called it game over.
Okay. Yeah.
After the fourth inning. And I'd seen him before, be upset about that or really get upset. And we've been talking about that as hey, you're not going to win every game, but you can control your attitude and your effort. You control how you are with your team. Were you a great teammate? Did you do everything you could do when you had a chance to make a play? Were you a great sport? Meaning when the other team scored, did you cheer them on? Did you cheer on your team when they made a great play? Were you that player? Because that's what I wanted. That's what I call the excellent player, right? That's greatness coming out. And last night, he's like, Dad, I did everything I can do. I was cheering people on. He goes, some of my teammates, they missed some plays, but I cheered them on anyway.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, dude, that's just a little bit of growth. And I think we have to recognize, to your point, John, knowing our tendencies, if we start to see them, start to work with them sooner.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I like that. I mean, I coached baseball. My three sons, I've got a daughter who's the youngest and she plays volleyball, but the other three played competitive baseball for years. And I coached a lot of that. And so I know that attitude and effort. I mean, I said it at nauseum and I'm sure that they hated to hear it, but those are the things you can control. And that, I mean, let's be honest, that translates now in life as you're an adult. So if you've got that seed getting cultivated and watered, I mean, that's going to last him a lot longer than being able to hit 400. So, did you have I meant to ask you a minute ago, did you ever have a life scripture? Do you have does your household have a scripture that y'all stand on maybe that's kind of foundational for you guys?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, this actually came out of my college season when I went as a freshman playing ball at University of Memphis. We would run the Cooper test. You familiar with it?
The Cooper what test?
The Cooper
No.
test. It was 2 miles in 12 minutes. I cannot run that today, just straight up. I'm nowhere near. That was our test that we would do before the season started. Now, remind you, Memphis, August, hot, humid. We would go at 7 p.m. to try to get away from some of the heat. And the verse that I continued to come back to was, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And I would literally repeat this as I'm running around. And it was basically a mile course. You ran it twice. And I'm repeating it. And I remember picking up guys as I'm running along. I'm chasing guys. And I was a captain my junior and senior year. And I'll never forget one of my best friends. And he was struggling to finish. And he's looking at me. And you can tell he needs it. And I'm just saying the verse out loud. And so that's been one for me that I go back to just because, like, when I've had my job eliminated, lost my job, lost, homes and like the financial crisis in 08, all these things that have happened. I'm like, I can still do all things. Like, Christ gives me strength to do these things. I'm not going to fall down further than I could ever get back up. And so that's been one that we have looked at together.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, for my wife and I, like, we've experienced it. So we've been thrown some curveballs and some things that I'm sure, like most marriages, where you're like, dude, the fact 20 years later, what I know and respect about people that have been married that long is, more importantly, the years is not so much, that's great, but the seasons they have been through.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that is something pretty powerful.
It is. I mean, marriage could be considered as a war of attrition. I mean, let's just be honest. It's a long game. It's not easy. And we are going to get into, trust me, audience, we are going to get into a lot of what Brian does and what he's done, because he's been very successful in business, real estate, mortgage, coaching, just leadership in general. I mean, you're right in our sweet spot here with some of the stuff you were doing that you do that I was reading about. Are you still doing a lot of the culture stuff as far as creating that for people and helping people understand like a healthy culture, create a culture and that kind of, because I want to get to that too in a little bit, but have you always considered yourself an entrepreneur? Like, when did you have that sort of aha moment that you're like, you know what, this is just who I am. Like, I can build things. I create, I have a vision. I cast it. I lead. We grow. Like, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm kind of my own, I don't know, captain of my ship. I don't know. Is that fair assessment?
So I go back to, I didn't know it as much as a kid, but I'll relate this. So when I played soccer, I was actually a goalkeeper, and goalkeepers wear a different jersey. Obviously, they get to use their hands. It's a different position. You usually have different training. I mean, it's quite like, you're talking about baseball. It's like a pitcher, right? And there's a specialty.
On an island, right? Yeah.
That's it. You're on an island. Like, the pitchers go away and they're doing their training. Goalkeepers went away and did their training.
Hey, before we get back to the conversation here with our guest, I want to thank one of our sponsors, a new partner, Uncommon, which is a ministry that is equipping and empowering great men to become the husbands, the fathers, and leaders they were called to be. Go to uncommon.org. That's UNCOMMEN.org. Check out their content. Go to YouVersion, download their devotionals. Great team, great people, great men, and they're out there for you. They're out there with great content, and they're out there to encourage us to be the men we were called to be. So I want to thank TJ and his team at Uncommon. So now let's get back to the conversation with our great guest here at Last in Line Podcast?
I was always a little bit different and unique in the sense of, like, I just related to the goalkeepers. Well, to be a goalkeeper, you got to have a few screws loose in a way. Like, you're coming out, putting your body on the line, especially at that level. And you have to not only have the foot skills as a field player, but you also need to learn all these other skills. And I equate that, it's like an entrepreneur today, right? I've always had this bug of, like, I love to create things. I love to be different. I love to, like, test the boundaries on stuff. And I never really knew. I got a corporate job out of college and I played a little bit professionally there. And right, and I'm going, and I just never really fit into like a 9 to 5, and I couldn't figure out what it was, right? Like, but I thought people, and I came up under the old school. My mom worked at the city for almost 30 years, same place, retired there. My dad, entrepreneur, did the psychology thing, right? Was a pastor. He did lots of things. I think I got the bug. I share that with everybody because you never know when it's going to hit you. But if you relate to that and you're like, and I want to do something different. I want to do something that really impacts people. And you have this bug to want to do more. You want to create things. You want to, go out there and make a difference. The reality is that's just an urge and probably a desire planted in you. You just need to figure out where the outlet is. And music was one for me. And then starting my entrepreneurial journey really elevated probably about 10 years ago. And I started getting back into real estate. So the '08 crash really set us and a lot of people back where it's like, ooh, I'm afraid of investing. Like, you don't want to be too far out. What I realized is in my 40s, these last 5 years, man, I love creating things. I love helping with other companies. I love helping other people win. And I've, in the last 5 years, done more than 20 years, right? Like, what it feels like some days, because I leaned into it instead of doing it a little bit of dabbling here and there. And so I think I was always being built for it. But every entrepreneur, what I would say, John, every entrepreneur has a different journey. So don't compare yourself. Because I've got some guys I mentor in their mid-20s now, and I'm able to give them wisdom of where they're already in it in a different season. And so to compare my 25 that year to their 25, it's not the same. Everybody's got a different journey. And so just embrace yours.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think COVID, kind of, if we're allowed to say the C word, I think it allowed for people to sort of kind of forced them into into a corner to where some of them had to realize that entrepreneurial chip that they had in them, and just, they had nothing to lose. They're like, okay, we got to figure something out. And they started something. I think some really great things were birthed out of COVID and things like that, because people, they're at home, they're remote, they're figuring out, wow, I like to do this and I could be good at this. So I'm going to build this business, but it's not for everybody. I mean, you know that there's probably been a ton of people that tried to do exactly what you're doing that have failed. And what's made you good at it? Like, what's made you successful? Obviously you saw the work ethic of your parents, and you kind of had that just kind of that, built into you, baked in. But anything that kind of gives you an edge that makes you set apart?
I absolutely love to compete. And it can't be faked. It can't be bought. Somebody likes to compete. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. And I've looked back throughout my life, like, I compete and I show up. I hate losing. Absolutely hate it. I love winning. But more importantly, I would tell you, out all that, what I've learned in my journey is I love to compete. Like, every morning when I go to the gym, they have the workout, and I do a group kind of fitness class. It's kind of CrossFit-esque, right? And it's not about anybody else that's there. I love the group that's there, and it's motivating. You got the music and the coaches and all stuff. But I just genuinely love to compete and see what I can do, what I'm made of, and test my limits and go into what I say is like the darkness in the tunnel of when you want to quit, it's getting hard, and you still go. Like, to me, that's the superpower. So I would say I absolutely love to compete. And what I've done in addition to that is hire great coaches. I've had mentors in my life that have really helped me direct that competitive drive to be positive, because it can be a negative, and direct it towards a positive light.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think people talk a lot about, they throw that word around, right? I'm a competitor, I love to compete. I love competition. But I think we find out a lot about people when, like you said, you get in that dark of dark, and you get into that backed in a corner again, to that analogy. You find out a lot about yourself. And I would say, I work out since COVID, of course. I was in a gym for a long time, but started working out in the garage by myself. And I'm in my third year of doing that. And you got to dig down deep to find the motivation to get out there 5 days a week. And I'm not saying anything special about me, but I think there's a thing inside people that they have to be able to see the end result. Like, we have to know where we want to be, right? And we have to know what we want to look like. If we want to, if I want to live a long time and see my grandchildren, I want to be able to be fit, active, that kind of thing. But in business too, you have to know, kind of have a glimpse of what you want to see yourself in 10 years. I want to look forward and go, okay, that's who I want to be. How do you practically build? Because we're going to talk about what I call like a dream, devise, deliver. So this idea, this vision, kind of incorporating the plan for making it happen, and then delivering and executing. So talk to the guy now that, maybe he's just like, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what good looks like. I don't know what I want to, I know what I'm good at, but I don't know. I couldn't tell you 10 years from now what that picture is going to be.
Man, so here's an exercise for you that I would do. I like to think in terms of now and then 5 years from now, and then I'll break into like some things you can do. But I would invite you to close your eyes and actually do a visualization exercise, and imagine you're standing up, eyes are closed, there's a person beside you, and we're going to build out the best version of you. And I would start at the bottom. And what shoes are they wearing, right? Like, you're probably wearing your favorite kind of shoes. You're not going to wear any crappy shoes. They're not going to have holes in them. You're not going to wear any of that, like your favorite shoes you'd actually own. And then move up, like, are you wearing your favorite jeans? Are you wearing like workout shorts, whatever, like you envision yourself there. And as you come up through, especially for guys, like midsection and upper body there, like you probably envision yourself being fit. Like, I don't know anybody that would say, man, when I envision my best version of myself, John, I envision myself fat and like overweight and a huge belly and like nobody really envisions that. So you have a chance. Like, let's be real. This is your movie. You're creating your character in the movie, and you're going to be fit. And as you move up through there, right? Like, even your face, like, do you have a beard? Do you not have a beard? Are you clean shaven? What's your hair look like? Like, all this stuff start to model out what would the ideal version of you look like? And then start to think about, what would they feel like? Would they stand proud, or they'd be all slouched over and like no confidence? And you can start to build out this person that's there. When you have an image of them, what I've realized is, once we can see it, we can go after it. Many of us, we can't even see what that best version looks like because it's been so many years since we were that person. And so the exercise is to bring you along the journey and really take the time to envision that person, and then write those things down. Those can now manifest into what your goals are, who you want to become. And I would even invite you, once you go through that exercise, start to see, okay, where does that person go? Like, play out a day in the life of John in his best. Is he at the beach with his family? Is he working out at the gym that morning? Is he going out to eat at this nice restaurant over there? Is he speaking at a church somewhere to people? Like, what are you doing in the day? And what you start to do is you start to create a movie. And this is what they found. And look, I'm uniquely equipped on some of this because my dad being a psychologist, I've studied this stuff. I love it. When you can play this out in your mind cannot really differentiate between what has really happened in the movie that you play for yourself. So when you do this and you repeat this exercise, what you said earlier, that's when you start to move closer to that person. Now we have to get into our actions, have to be in alignment with, okay, I said I'm gonna be this person. Well, if that person, what do? They work out regularly. They eat clean. They drink water. They're not out drinking beers and smoking weed and doing all this stupid stuff, right? You start to become that person. So what I would tell you is, it is a journey about who you're becoming. And every day you're making that vote through these little decisions. Did you wake up when your alarm went off if you use an alarm? Did you wake up and have any quiet time? Did you wake up and go work out? Did you drink some water when you make your bed? Like, all these things, these are the wins you want to stack. And so I share all that because I've been there. I've been there and not done that stuff, and I've been there and done it. And you want to be superhuman? You want to be somebody that actually dominates their life? There's nothing like it. It might seem hokey to you. It did to me at first. when I started to do these things, I started to become that person. And then I realized there was more God created me for.
Yeah.
Still a lot. And look, guys, there's always a gap. I'm going to tell you, there's always a gap between where I am and where I see myself being in the next 5 years. Our job is to close the gap.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, the visualization, I could be better at being more consistent with that. But my son, being a pitcher a few years ago, his pitching coach had him lay down and close his eyes and do that because he was pitching the next day. And he had him describe every batter that came through the lineup and every pitch he threw, where it was, the velocity, like literally down to the detail. And he had the most strikeouts. He threw a 5-inning shutout. I mean, so he saw it happening. And yes, you have to do the work to get yourself physically capable of pulling it off. But a lot of our problem is the 6 inches between our ears. And so he figured that out, saw it, and then went out and executed. So I guess that leads us right in. This dream, devise, deliver that I came up with. And I've never done this with anybody. So I don't know if I was just checking out your stuff and you seem like the perfect guinea pig for this. Where is the disconnect the most? Like, where do we miss it? Like, a lot of us are good dreamers, right? A lot of us may just not know how to plan, but if we could, we would definitely deliver and execute. Or maybe we got people that are really good, kind of worker bees, deliver, but man, I just can't see it in the beginning stage. Like, I just can't dream it alive. Where do you see, like, people you coach, people you see, even maybe for you personally, where's the biggest disconnect of those three, you think?
As you study society, and I think like some of the people I coach, some of the businesses we run, you look at even high performers, the ones that are the ultra high performers, you'll see there's a difference between them. We live in a society that's very much immediate gratification. Mm-hmm. And we laugh about this, but we literally have people that work out for a week and they'll come to the gym or they'll tell you about they started it. In a week, they want to see these massive results, right? Like, I worked out for a week. But the last 51 weeks, if you want to take the year, you were doing something else. In my business, man, I was diligent for a week. I was reviewing my financials. I was reviewing all of the businesses here. I was coaching my people. I was engaged. I was doing all this. And we think a week is going to change what's there. So I'll tell you, number one, I think we live in a society and it's actually promoted. When you look at just the foods, the commercials, the ease of which we can get access to things that are not healthy for us. It's easier to be not healthy. Let's just be real in the United States than it is. You have to be thoughtful and planful, which is why the top percentage, probably the top 5 to 10%, we don't realize actually you're just doing very simple things. And so I tell you, number two, daily stacking of wins. This has been a secret to me of every day stacking the things that are important, having a game plan. I map my weeks out on a Sunday night from my kids' sports to if I'm going on a lunch date with my wife, to appointments, to meetings, and I'm going to look through it and just make sure everything that I want in my calendar, the reality is I get to choose it. And so I would say number two is daily stacking of wins that are in alignment with your schedule that you have there. And then the third, here's the deal. I think this is the biggest disconnect from people is we think it's not going to be hard. We've been sold a bill of goods and people have told us it's easy because you go on Instagram and you see all these people that you think are successful. And can I just be the one to tell you, if no one's told you lately, that probably more than half of the people that are on there are fake. Like, I know balance sheets. I know people that actually earn money. I know people that are actually strong in their faith. I know people that actually show up to their kids' sports games. I know people that are actually living quality life. Yeah. And if you're viewing that and judging that by what they put on Instagram, you need to get your circle right. And the way that you can combat this and realize it is going to be a hard life. These are hard choices. It was never meant to be easy, right? It wasn't easy for Jesus. It hasn't been easy for John Maxwell, all these people we talked about today. And so your circle, people talk about the 5 people that you're around the most. I'm just going to tell you my experience the last 5 years. Every time I've leveled up the people I'm around, I've had breakthroughs. Like massive breakthroughs in my life. And look, it's not just business success. It's just being, again, it's about who is Brian becoming. And I look back, I wouldn't even recognize myself almost 5 years ago. I wouldn't.
Hey,
That's what you need to be thinking.
take me through that, what you just said, because to someone saying level up the people you're around, that could just mean get rid of the trash that you're hanging out with and get around some people that just aren't axe murderers and porn addiction people. I think it means get around people better than you. Like, you would probably agree with this. Talk about how practical that can be. I mean, do you just call 5 people and you all of a sudden got this dynamic, just incredible circle, or how do you have to work for that?
So I wish it starts with one decision. And for all of you, and you can reach out to me, right? Like, I've got plenty of very strong leaders, faith-based leaders, people that run great masterminds, entrepreneurial groups, and whether they're in person or online, you can get in these things. Some of these are free resources, guys. Let's be real. Some of these guys have their own free podcasts. They have YouTube videos. If you just had those people, because oftentimes, John, I know where you're going, and I'm going to kind of debunk the myth.
Do that.
Yes, you need to be around them. Yes, you need to have that physical presence is the next level. But if you can't afford that and you can't get to that today, you can get on and listen to a podcast today for free of the right people, right?
Yep.
Steve Weatherford's one of my favorites, by the way. It probably fits into this.
Yeah.
And we invited Steve to come on the podcast to share his story, his faith. And I've watched that guy grow over the last couple of years. And like, he's got his own mastermind and things. And he's doing all. So look, you can start with the free. And then what I would tell you, as you start to level up, and level up means you're starting to think bigger, which means if you think bigger, the only way to get bigger is to act bigger, right? I can think about it, but unless I act on it, it isn't happening. When you join these groups, you start to pay to be around people, which is that paying for proximity.
Skin in the game, right?
I'm telling you, every time I've done it, I've been scared to death, John, of some of these, because some of these I have spent more money than I made in months, and I'm like, and I'm investing in this. And then what I realized, every single time I met somebody that helped me, I met somebody I could help, and I leveled up in learning, but I started to see that's possible. Like, that guy's not that different than me.
Yeah.
He's further along. He's made some better decisions than I have.
Mm-hmm.
He isn't that different than me. That's being around those people. Let me just tell you, when you start to really get serious about it, that's when you're all in and you commit. And I've got people in my life, I call it, your community is the biggest group that's around, like they kind of interact, but it's a huge network. You're probably not talking to them every day, maybe not even once a month. You move into your circle. Those are going to be people that are closer to you. It could be 15 to 25 people probably, but they're close enough to you. They would answer, they would text you, all of that. You're really regular with them and you got your corner. Who are those 3 to 5 people? Like, I've got some of those guys in my life. When stuff hits the fan, I've got a big decision to make. Like, I know who I'm calling. You don't have those people in your life, to your point, that have done more than you, have been through more than you. You need to find them today. And it really is not that hard. Not any different than just reaching out, sending a DM, reaching out to one of us, and connecting up.
Yeah.
That's how it's done. Guys, we overcomplicate it.
That is. I mean, I guy that I listen to on Kyle Thompson is on Undaunted Life. He does a man's podcast, faith-based guy, very strong Christian, very, very right in your face too, which is what I need. But he said he calls them the 3 a.m. friends, not the 5 p.m. friends, right? You want the guy that's already putting his keys in his pocket when he gets your call at 3 a.m. And so those are hard to come by. I mean, my dad, our generation before us, I think, was better at it. My dad's generation, like, he had a handful, and he said, man, if you can just have 1 or 2 of those that are just lifelong, like, ride or die guys, then you're lucky. And you really are. I think sometimes as guys, we're like, well, I got to have 20 of those or I'm not even going to try. And you just got to start, to your point, start listening to free stuff. And then at some point, like, you up the ante, right? You can only, that can only get you so far. And then you up the ante and you invest monetarily with your time, resources, whatever, but it's got to be worth it to you to invest in yourself. And that's what you're saying. And you've done that. And, talk about, so your business, I mean, you just got a ton of assets out there and teams that you're building, and culture's a big thing for you. Without maybe unpacking it, and so we can maybe have an excuse to bring you back on another time. Culture, man, can you boil it down? And do you incorporate, without kind of being obviously incorporating, faith foundations, faith principles. Like, how do you navigate that, man? What's kind of your home run for helping people with culture?
Man, I love this. And I have a unique vantage point of playing sports for as long as I did. And I share with people in college, we were a pretty diverse team, like not just from like ethnicities, but different countries that players came from, different age groups. You got freshman to senior, totally different dynamics happening in their life. And you had people from different, economic statuses, right, coming in. And the whole thing, like to bring together a great team in a soccer team or a sports team, it's really no different than building out a company and a culture. And you have to have a common mission. And I think for a lot of us, as leaders, we don't really talk about what is the mission? Like, why are we doing what we're doing? And a lot of people are drawn to a compelling vision. And as the leader, if you're leading a team of 3 or 3,000, it doesn't really matter. I've worked in companies, as small as a couple hundred to 10,000, right? Like, you need to be someone that is relatable, that you care about your team, and you're always bringing out the best in them. And so our company, Revolution Mortgage, we talk about it's a culture of excellence and a culture of winning. And we define those, right? Excellence is showing up, doing the best you can do at every stage of the day, making the right decisions, the right way, whether somebody's looking or not looking. It's doing the extra. It's being detailed in your work, right? It's being a great team player and all of that. Culture of winning is beyond you winning, who are you helping around you win today? And what I have found when we act in the service of others, man, it's a beautiful thing. Like, I can help other people win. And as a byproduct, I'm going to win, right? Like, because if I help 5 people on my team win today, well, guess what? They all got extra wins. They're going to feel good. They're going to show up empowered and confident and lead through. So what I tell you is you build your culture. You have a vision for what your culture is going to look like. And are you embodying that culture? And little things matter. I'll give you an example. One of our guys on our team, one of the executives on our group, was talking about his health journey and his fitness journey, even his faith journey. We started talking about how those were intertwined. We were able to put together a workout plan for him, shared some eating things with him, got him drinking, a gallon of water every day, and he's listening to podcasts and reading scripture to start the day. Those might seem like huge moves, but the way that we kind of moved him through just adding those and starting to stack them, now he's a completely different person. And I love helping people with that, right? They may call you about parenting questions. You just don't know.
Yeah.
So look, in our generation now is different than our parents. John, you were mentioning that. Is it used to be, don't talk about anything outside the office. Don't talk about money. Don't talk about all these things.
Yeah.
Man, I just think today's modern leader, you're fully transparent. You are someone that is actually sharing what you're learning and a giver, and I think about the more you can give your team and take care of them, they will take care of you and they will take care of the culture for you. And so
that's right.
How you
That's
lead.
good. That's good, man. And of course, I didn't pay you to say that because this is a servant leadership podcast and you did that all on your own. So, wow, you can take the credit for that. We had nothing to do with it. But what's your Venmo again? No, I'm just playing. I'm kidding.
Right? It's like, hey, that fit in perfect though. Like, but it's the truth. Look, I tell you, like if you met me at a ball game or you met me, at church, or I was on, like, I'm the same person. And what I tell you is like, I'm a constant learner, but I'm just sharing what I'm going through. Right. And I think that's what people they're longing for today. Somebody's just gonna come along with them.
That's good. No, it is. And so I know you got a lot going on. It's a busy Friday afternoon. Man, tell us, I guess, what you're a part of that we can maybe tap into, maybe how we can reach out to you, what resources are out there. I know there is a book, correct?
Yep.
You wrote a book. So tell us about it a little bit and then kind of where to find you if we need to like hit you up for some extra help.
Heck yeah. I'll grab, so somebody just sent a copy. I'm going to sign this one and send back. So I don't know if it's on, but there's the book right there. Nice little glamour shot. Yeah. That is actually a really cool book and resource I would advise for everybody on here. You're going to love the book because it was built for you. Literally. We take 11 stories of different leaders and they've all come from different walks and backgrounds. And so you're going to relate to some of them more than others, but their journey was all where they've hit pretty much what we would call rock bottom. They have fallen down. They have hit where they thought they weren't coming back, thought they'd lost it all. And then they were able to overcome that And they not only tell you that inspirational story so you can connect with them as a human, but they give you the tools and almost like a little mini TED talk. Like if you were to read a chapter, it probably takes you under 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And you get that one lesson from an expert in their field. So we packed 11 of them in there. One of those is mine, people in my life that have had a direct impact. So when you're reading the stories, know all of those people have helped shape and mold who I am as a leader and challenge my thinking and, you know, my beliefs. They've made an impact. And you probably wouldn't be able to get access to many of them directly, like in enough one-on-one time, but you can get that with them in the book. If you like it, go check out the podcast, because all of those guests in the book, they were actually on my show. And so Finding Your Competitive Edge, we rebranded it from the Brian Covey Show.
Yeah.
Go check that out. And we have a ton of great guests that you can go through and just pick. And it's all leadership, mindset, finding your competitive edge, all these things just to help you be who God created you to be, man. That's what I say.
Good.
Like, we're going to help you unpack that and uncover it and then go live a great life.
Well, I feel kind of stupid because I mispronounced your name? It's not Covey, it's Covey.
It is Covey, but
okay.
I get a lot of different variations. So you would not be the first, nor will you be the last.
So maybe I didn't butcher it quite as bad as someone else had. All right. I have one more, and it hit me when you were talking, and I'm going to close. I'm going to just go right into ending the conversation after you answer this, because this is going to be a mic drop moment for you. If I were to ask your dad, what are you most proud of about Brian? What would he say?
Well, knowing my dad, it would be that I've got a relationship with Jesus. I know where I'm going to go when I die, and that I'm a great husband and father, and that I've overcome a lot of stuff that he's seen. And I think he probably used that as a testimony of what a great dad he was and how you can lead with grace and compassion. And then no matter what you're going through, like with God, with Jesus on your side, man, like it's not a slogan. Like you can really do all things. And that's what he'd say. You know, we still talk quite often, and I'll just tell you, man, like couldn't be more proud. I got the best dad in the world. And if I can be half of that and pass on the things he's taught me, then it'll continue down the legacy.
That's good, man. And audience, you'll notice, I mean, for as accomplished as Brian is, nothing came up about how big his company is or how many dollar signs there are attached to any of his things that he's a part of. What he said was his faith and his family are what he would say his dad is most proud of. So that's something for somebody. And I didn't plan to ask that question. You can even look at my notes. I didn't have it written down, but I felt like that was because I could tell you and your dad have a good relationship. So anyway, with that, audience, he has been Brian Covey. We have been Last in Line. Be blessed.